How's it going, everyone? King Blacktooth here. So, an NDA has lifted, which is the perfect time to explain some Gwent. And I've got the honour of being one of the few people which can explain and talk to you about the new upcoming positioning patch or positioning build that is coming to Gwent in the near future. We don't quite know when the patch is coming. It might not be the next one or the one after that, but it is definitely coming to Gwent. So it was under NDA, which means I couldn't talk about it, but now I can. So I'm hoping to explain this as best I can. We don't have footage of this because we weren't allowed it, but I'm going to do some mock-up screenshots and hopefully I'll explain and show you and demonstrate just what this positioning patch and build is all about. So I really hope you enjoy it. It's big news for Gwent. It's going to change the way Gwent is played completely. So just sit back, relax, and try and take it all in. Okay? So first of all, it's all subject to change, but when I went to CD Projekt Red to experience the Nilfgaard patch, I was able to play a demo of this new positioning build. Okay? And this really changes the way Gwent is going to be played quite drastically. And it comes out in two forms, really. And it's got a third extra usability improvements across the board as well. So the first big change comes to positioning of our units when we place them onto the battlefield. So currently we can choose to put our units on the siege row, the range row, or the melee row. And this is going to stay the same, but currently in Gwent we can't choose whereabouts on the row we place the unit. Okay, it always goes on the right hand side of all the existing units that are already on the board. However, with the new positioning patch, you will get freedom to place it either on the left hand side, on the right hand side, or in between any other two cards which are on the board already. Okay, so you can actually have a lot of freedom on where this unit particularly gets placed. Now, in the current state of Gwent, there's not really any reason for this. It doesn't seem to affect anything where a unit actually goes. However, this is where the second big change comes into play. So the second big change comes to how abilities work in Gwent. And this change really just adds a lot of freedom and creativity to CD Projekt Red's toolkit when creating new cards and modifying existing cards. So currently in Gwent we've only got single targets, which are things like Swallow Potion and Owl's Thunders. We've got multiple targets like the Clan Brockvar Archer and Gremis, where you select multiple targets. We've got same instance cards, things like Blizzard Elixir and Thunderbolt Potion. And we've got an entire row. These are things like Lacerate or things like Commander's Horn. Now, Imlerith, he's like a strange one. He does a single target and an entire row, but it still falls into both of those particular areas. So what this change does to how abilities work and the whole positioning system in general, because it really ties in with the big change number one, is that they can actually have abilities affect other cards next to the card that you target. And it really adds positioning into the effects of abilities as well now. So what I mean by this, for example, Lacerate is an excellent example. Lacerate was getting large amounts of value when they didn't really intend it to get that much. So they intended it to only get about 3 to 12 damage. But if someone stacked up on a row, you could easily get 20 or more. Okay, so what Lacerate will probably do now is that you select a target, okay, and it will do 3 damage to that target, and it will probably do 2 damage to the targets either side, and 1 damage to the targets either side. So it's like a staggered pyramid of damage there. And this really plays into the strategicness of the big change number one of positioning your units efficiently. If you put all your weak units in a big clump, then Lacerate's going to remove all of them. However, if you spread them apart, Lacerate won't be able to affect all of them and you'll be safer for it. So positioning of units is very strategic because the abilities can now target cards and cards next to those cards and stuff like that. So another card which will probably utilize this positioning system with its effect is the Hawker Healer. Now the Hawker Healer is a 2 strength bronze card for Squirtle. You place it on a row and it gives +3 strength to everything else on that row that is non-gold, which understandably could be quite powerful, especially if people stack up on a particular row. So they wanted it again to get 3 to 12 strength, but it would get in upwards of 20 because people would stack on a row and then play it. And you could replay it and you could replay it with, so it was becoming very troublesome. With this positioning system, the Hawker Healer will probably become more of a 2 strength minion that when you place it, it'll give 3 strength to units either side of it or something like that. But obviously this is just a hypothesis, I don't know any of this, but this is generally how CD Projekt Red are looking towards the game. So this again falls into the big change number 1, where wherever you place your units is very important. If you want to heal these 2 units, you place the Hawker Healer between them. If you want to heal these 2, you place the Hawker Healer between them, and stuff like that. So, you know, really helps strategically. You want to place units that want buffs together, so the Hawker Healer can buff those ones, possibly the weak ones together, or that might be worrisome for Lacerate. So there's a lot of strategy involved in this positioning system. But there are also some other ways that the positioning system can be used creatively, and I think one of them is the Vran Warrior. Currently he consumes the lowest strength unit on his particular row every 2 turns. But one of the suggested things for him is to only consume the leftmost unit. Okay, so you place him down on the right and he will consume the units on the left, whatever that is. Now this obviously adds in a bit of strategicness, that anything that you don't want to be consumed on that particular row, you just place to the right of the Vran Warrior. Okay, because then he doesn't consume anything on the right, even if there's no targets left on the left. So there's the positioning of the Vran Warrior for consuming purposes, is another strategy which the positioning system would open up. So units which spawn units like the Fire Elemental will still very much likely spawn units always on the right hand side, which will combo well with the Vran Warrior's positioning of the left consume, which is still quite useful. With this introduction of positioning and abilities changing for positioning purposes, we may start to see some changes to card which allows you to switch positions of certain cards on the board. Okay, so very much like Geralt Ard and the Drowner, we might start seeing some defensive options for switching cards around, so you can move a card from the left hand side to the rightmost side and stuff like this. Now this is purely speculation, I saw nothing that would indicate this, but it's just an option that might come about with the upcoming positioning patch. So apart from those 2 huge changes to Gwent and how Gwent is played with the positioning system, there are a lot of improvements to usability on the demo build that I got to see. So if you've got any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll go over some of the improvements that I noticed. First one was when you are drawing cards, they don't come up to the front of the board anymore and then go to your hand. They come up to the side, and it kind of, everything goes to that area, which I think looks really good. Now, in the actual demo build, Alzor's Thunder was able to target 3 units. Now, this was just purely so we could test out abilities, but that's not what they intend to do with Alzor's Thunder. But when I selected it, I played the card and it will go shift to the right hand side here, and I was able to target 3 units much like the Clan Brockwar Archer would be able to. Now obviously if I select 2 and then I undo it, obviously I can do that already, but you can never at the moment undo completely your use of that card. Well, in this new positioning system you should be able to do that, unless they've changed their mind, because it does raise some questions on when your opponent can start to see the card that you've played, probably after you've made all interactions most likely. Think of it very much like chess. You play a card, but until you've absolutely finished using that card, the opponent doesn't see it. So it's like keeping your fingers on the chess piece. As soon as you've finished it and taken your hand off it, it counts as the move being made. But until then, you can always undo it. So you play something like Alzor's Thunder, which targets 3 units. And if you don't actually want to do it, you can undo it, and put that card back into your hand and select something else, which is just a nice little way of maybe not committing to something until it's absolutely done, which is just a nice little change in my opinion. Now also, when you're selecting targets with multiple use or Alzor's Thunder or anything like that, it will darken the cards which are not eligible for being attacked. So if you've got some gold units on the board and you're not eligible to attack those with this particular card, it will shade them, make them darker, so only the ones that are targetable will appear nice and bright, which is useful. And also, when you can place a card, it will light up the little arrows on either side of the rows, which really allows you to see just whereabouts you can place cards or, you know, affect certain rows and stuff like that, which is very useful. So there was a lot of other small things. If you remember back to the beginning Gwent, whenever you used Monster Nest on a load of units, it would bring them all up and then it would start placing them on the row one at a time really slowly. But then since then we've had an update where you use Monster Nest and it puts them all up and then it puts them all onto the row in one big go, which is very nice. It's a lot faster and it looks physically better. Well, imagine that is going to happen again with this positioning patch. It's hard to explain it without going into massive detail, but things drew nicer. You drew both cards and they went into your hand very quickly, very nicely, but you still were able to see what they were. Any cards removed from the board would all go to the graveyard very quickly. Nothing hung around. It was all very slimlined, which felt really good. So that's generally it for the positioning build. I hope you were able to understand what was going on. I mean, there are many cards which you can imagine will change due to this positioning of abilities and positioning of units. And I think some of the excellent examples of that are Imlerith. He'll probably do 3 damage to one unit and 2 damage to units either side and 1 damage to units either side or something like that. Geralt Ard, we're starting to see they didn't want it to affect an entire row. Well, this positioning system is perfect for him. He will target a unit and units either side of that unit will get pushed back. So a maximum of 3 units, but it'll be the target that you want and the targets either side. So there's a lot of positioning strategy. You don't want to put 2 really strong units together because then Geralt Ard can push them both back. Obviously, if you've only got 3 units on a row, he pushes them all back. So really good strategic options there, and it opens up a lot of gameplay options with strategicness on where you place your units. You know, Letho of Gullet, very much the same. You'll place him on a row, or you select a target and he'll consume that one and the ones either side, possibly. You know, so there's a lot of really nice options with cards which will probably get changed due to this positioning system, which hopefully will just open up more balance, more strategy with where you place your cards on particular rows, and just like more strategy on when you lacerate something. Maybe you should Owlsor something in the middle to move cards together so that lacerate becomes more effective, stuff like that. So thank you for watching this video. I hope this was very informative for you. If you've got any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask me, because you know I did play this build and maybe I've missed something out. If you want to, maybe you'll think of better questions to ask than I have explained. So feel free definitely to ask me any questions about this positioning patch and I'll tell you what I can. But don't forget that there are subject to change. I only played a very early build, but thanks for watching, guys. As usual, take care and I'll see you again very soon.